Ladies and gentlemen, this is my humble contribution to the lecture on disability and global health. I will start with an introduction of myself, a short one. My name is Abdul Busuulwa, doctor. I hold a PhD in accessible ICTs for persons with visual disabilities, a master's in management, majoring in human resource management, a postgraduate diploma in community-based rehabilitation, and a bachelor's in mass communication. I have been the executive director of CBR Africa Network, and I am a person with visual impairment. I was tasked to answer a few questions to give my experiences about access on assistive technology. So these are my experiences and observations in relation to assistive technology. One of the questions I was supposed to answer is, what are the most common assistive technologies needed by people with disabilities in Uganda and other countries in which we have networks? The most common ones here include wheelchairs, crutches for physical disability, eyeglasses and white canes for people with visual impairment, hearing aids for people with hearing impairment. These are the most common ones, and they are also on the priority list for the World Health Organization on assistive technology. So these are the most common ones as far as I'm concerned. But I want to add that assistive technology, in terms of digital technology, is also catching up as a priority assistive technology. Some of these include screen readers and screen magnifiers. These are increasingly getting to be used by people with disabilities in the different countries. The second question, what are the sources of accessing these needed assistive technologies? Are people buying them by themselves? Are they getting government subsidies, or they are being donated? Donation, in my own experience and observation, donation is the most dominant source of assistive technology in Uganda and in many other African countries. The reason is simple. Assistive technologies are very expensive to buy, so people with disabilities cannot afford them. So there are organizations in the North, especially in the US and Western Europe, who are pursuing similar agendas, like organizations of persons with disabilities in Africa. So they share some of these with their southern counterparts, especially in Africa. But to some extent, government is also catching up through waiving taxes on imported assistive technologies, and sometimes controlled direct purchase by different governments for specific groups of people. I should also add on donation that international donor agencies like DFID, USAID, DANIDA, SIDA, GIZ, they are also to some limited extent involved in the provision of these technologies. The third question: what are some of the barriers to the uptake and sustained use of assistive technologies by people with disabilities? These include the following. The most important barrier is that the cost of accessing these assistive technologies is very, very high. So many people cannot afford these assistive technologies. So many of the people that need them really don't access them because they are very, very expensive. You find that an ordinary wheelchair may cost more than $200. You will find that a simple white cane costs almost $50, and all those are way beyond the reach of many people with disabilities. Another major barrier is the identity crisis. The moment somebody is seen with an assistive technology, maybe a crutch, a white cane, an eyeglass, a hearing aid, in most cases you'll be associated with disability. So if somebody may afford to go without this assistive technology, even if this person needs it, you'll be more comfortable not to use it. For instance, we see people, especially if they are a bit wealthy, who would prefer that when they reach a function, they are wheeled in the wheelchair. Then when they reach the chair to sit on, the wheelchair is removed and the person sits in an ordinary chair. Or if he's moving, he doesn't want to use a tricycle or wheelchair, but wants to use a car, so that he disguises himself as somebody that doesn't have a disability. So identity crisis is one of the barriers to the use of assistive technology. Another major barrier is that often assistive technologies are treated as special equipment, and this makes them very rare to find on the local market. So as I said at the beginning, you find that many of these assistive technologies come from the West, so they are not commonly available on the local market because the makers of these assistive technologies still regard them as special, and the technology is not easily transferred. So this makes them rare, and people in the rural areas who may need them do not find them in their local departmental stores. So another barrier is that some assistive technologies require a number of skills or some skill levels in order to be used. Here I'm basically talking about the element of assistive communication or digital technology. If you're going to use screen readers and screen magnifiers, you need to be trained on how to use them. So those that don't have teachers to train them on how to use those assistive technologies may necessarily not use them simply because they may not know how to use them. Closely related is that some assistive technology, especially the digital ones, may be incompatible with mainstream technologies. A case in point are those assistive technologies that work with maybe smartphones. There are hearing aids that are not compatible with all phones. Therefore, somebody with a hearing impairment who may want to benefit from a hearing aid to be paired with a smartphone may not be able to use it on each and every phone. Likewise, you find that some phones you cannot install on them a screen reader or screen magnifier. Therefore, you have to buy expensive phones which are compatible with the assistive technology. So this becomes a barrier. You may want to have a cheap phone, but this cheap phone again will not be able to accommodate the installation of an assistive. So incompatibility between mainstream technology and assistive technology sometimes is a problem. Finally, on the barriers, again, I want to talk about digital assistive technology. Many of them require constant update, like screen readers and screen magnifiers. So these constant updates make them irrelevant after some short time, and yet you bought them very expensively. Just imagine you use a screen reader for only 1 year and you need to put in some more money to get the latest update. And if you don't get the update, the assistive technology will not be in tandem with mainstream technology like Microsoft Office and others. So it reaches a time when it cannot work because other technologies will have moved on to other levels. So that constant update also becomes a barrier to the users of assistive technology. So the final question here is, what are some of the solutions for the sustainable use of assistive technology? The first solution is encouragement of universal design. This is the design of products, environments, and the communications to be used by the widest number of people to the greatest extent possible, without the need for adaptation or specialized design. So when technologies are designed in such a way that they can be used by as many people as possible, you don't need the use of assistive technology. For example, if you buy an iPhone comes with a screen reader called VoiceOver, and it is on all iPhones. So for a person with vision impairment, you don't have to pay more money to get the screen reader. Secondly, you don't even have to pay more money every year to get an update of the iPhone or the VoiceOver screen reader. So when you don't do that, it means if you struggle and get the money for an iPhone, you have solved all the issues around assistive technology in as far as screen readers and screen magnifiers are concerned in the use of an iPhone. So if other assistive technologies were made in such a way that they are used as mainstream technologies, for example, if a motorcycle is made in such a way that it can be ridden by somebody without a disability and somebody with a disability in the same way, then probably the need for a tricycle will not be there. You just go and buy another motorcycle and just customize it in a very simple way without necessarily buying anything new, and then you'll be able to use it. So that's one of the solutions. Solution number 2 is use of open source software. Open source software and freeware. There are softwares that are freely available on the open source, especially digital technology, and you'll use these to offset the cost of assistive technology. One example is the non-visual desktop access, NVDA, which can be installed on the Windows platform, and it can substitute for other expensive softwares like Systems Access, JAWS for Windows, and others. Similarly, there are tools within the Windows platforms and other platforms that you can use. You can customize in order to use them without an extra cost. That is another very important solution to the barriers. Another one is use of government policies. So these government policies, if any government is very sensitive to its people, sometimes it can help to offset the cost of assistive technology. For example, if you remove taxes on any wheelchairs, crutches, eyeglasses that are imported into a country, this will reduce the price very, very considerably, which the case would be different if you left everything to the consumer, including paying taxes. Another would be that, like in the US, they will say that any organization that is going to serve people with disabilities, we shall not give you tenders from government if you don't buy the kind of technology that people with disabilities can use. So this forces the private sector to put in some investment around assistive technology. So this is also a government policy which is very useful. Then controlled purchase, where the government itself gets its resources and buys specific assistive technologies. This can encourage the spread of the use of assistive technology to people who would otherwise not be able to use them when they don't have the resources. Another, and probably the final solution for me, is that we should encourage the local production of assistive technology. This is possible through community-based rehabilitation principle of use. Solution to the barriers towards the uptake and sustained use of assistive technology is encouragement of local production of assistive technology. This is possible through the principle of using locally available resources, which is a principle of community-based rehabilitation. So if you use local materials like wood, scrap metal, recycled plastics, and other things to produce assistive technology, it can go a long way in ensuring that people have assistive technologies, and they can even ensure that these technologies are replaced whenever they run obsolete. So in conclusion, I will say these words. According to the World Health Organization fact sheet on assistive technology, we know that more than 1 billion people globally need one or more assistive technology product, and only 1 in 10 people that need this assistive technology can really access it today. So this means that there is a very, very great need for assistive technology, yet very many people cannot access it. So I hope this lecture can help the students to understand that assistive technology is something very important for many people, but again, those people that need it do not access it. We need assistive technology to aid our communication as people with disabilities, to aid our mobility, to aid our memory for those with intellectual and psychosocial disability. The CBR Africa Network has been promoting the use of assistive technology and other practices of rehabilitation for the last 20 years, close to 20 years really, and we intend to continue doing this in the foreseeable future. This is possible through encouraging the use of locally available resources, sharing of experiences in regard to availability of technology, and bringing people with disabilities together to advocate for their rights to access assistive technology. wherever they are within their communities. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for listening to me, and that's the end of my presentation.